next time on Philosophy Talk.
Listen to Philosophy Talk today at noon on KSJE 90.9 FM, Farmington. KSJE is proud to support the Aztec Highland Games and Celtic Music Festival, October 2nd and 3rd at Riverside Park in Aztec. Music from Big Patty, Smelter Mountain Boys, Patrick Crossing and Devil's Dram, and featuring the Highland Games Athletic Competition. Plus Scottish vendors, food, and clans. Find out more online at aztechhighlandgames.com. KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, here to meet your urgent and emergent medical needs, whether they are COVID-19 related or not. Medical emergencies happen when you least expect them, whether it's a stroke, heart attack, illness, or injury. San Juan Regional Medical Center's caregivers are here to provide care to you and your loved ones. Find out more online at sanjuanregional.com. Twelve minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Tuesday morning, September the 28th, 2021. Good morning, everybody. I'm Scott Michlin, and thanks for tuning in to KSJE 90.9 FM, over the air, of course, here in San Juan County. If you're in the Durango, Colorado area, you can tune us in at 103.3 FM if you're driving around, and of course, anywhere else on the planet. You can just stream the radio station from our website at ksje.com or ask your smart speaker to play KSJE, and guess what? I bet it will. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Also, welcome to our viewers who are watching this visual radio program. It is streaming live this morning out to the KSJE Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and our Twitter account. We're glad that you are with us this morning, everybody, as well, because coming up, our topic this morning is Bloomfield Schools. I'll be talking with Operations Director James Olivas coming up in a moment, so stay tuned for that in the next few moments right here on KSJE. Later on this hour, of course, it's our Adopt a Pet Tuesday segment at 8:50 a.m. We'll be introducing you to some pets who are ready to be adopted from the Farmington Regional Animal Shelter, including Skipper, the dog you see on the screen right there. He is ready to go. Next hour, Mick Hess and Roving with the Arts. And this morning is another episode of Hope Not Hate, when Mick features a composer who was imprisoned in a concentration camp during World War II. We're going to be hearing music from Olivier Messiaen in his quartet for the End of Time. He wrote that while he was imprisoned. He survived his imprisonment, went on to live a long life. You'll learn all about him and his music coming up today, 9:06 on KSJE. Don't forget, you can also check us out on our Instagram page in addition to our other social media pages. And let's talk a little bit about podcasts. If you're a podcast person, you can subscribe for free to KSJE Podcasts on all these popular apps that you see on the screen. So wherever you listen to your podcasts, subscribe to KSJE. You can check us out on our podcast app as well. Weather forecasts, some morning fog perhaps this morning in the valleys, burning off at some point, but still a cool day today with mostly cloudy skies, and some off and on rain showers are still in the forecast for the next several days, as you can see. 53 right now outside our studios here at San Juan College, on our way to a high of 70 degrees today, with a chance of scattered showers and thunderstorms. 52 overnight tonight, a bit cooler tomorrow, the high 67 on Wednesday, 64 on Thursday, 63 on Friday before things start to warm up, with sunshine just in time for the weekend. How about sunshine and 68 on Saturday, sunshine and 70 on Sunday? So that looks like a pretty good couple of days in a row for a lot of events that are planned this weekend. So that is good news. Let me turn to my guest, who is joining me this morning, as I mentioned, from the Bloomfield School District, Director of Operations. James Olivas is here. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Thanks for coming back over. Good to have you here.
Thanks for the invite.
Superintendent Mizell is off on some superintendent business today, so you get the job of being on the radio.
That is correct.
Very good. Excellent. Well, let's talk a little bit about things that are going on at Bloomfield schools. And you were telling me that you've got some more federal money coming in from some CARES Act funding that the federal government passed, and that will provide a nice boost for Bloomfield schools to do some projects, right?
Yes, it will. This is like the third installment of funds, CARES Act funds. It's known as the ARP funds, which is nice because we get to do some things that we need in our schools. I mean, our youngest school is 20 years plus, and so, there's some systems that we need to have updated, and this is a great way to use funds to help us out.
Right. So that's exciting, and it's a lot of money, too. You were telling me before we came on the air this morning, it totals about how much for the district?
It's about $6 million, and so here in the past several months, we've been working with stakeholders and school principals and district staff, and just trying to find out the best way that we can utilize these funds to not just build improve infrastructure and whatnot, but also take that money and support students and families.
Right. And so the money has to be used mostly for COVID-related needs and things like that, or do you have a little bit of flexibility as to how you can spend this $6 million?
We do have some flexibility. The priorities are the learning gap that exists, being able to respond to pandemic issues that come up, and really just, as students transition back into the physical world, addressing the needs of social emotional learning, cultural learning relevance, again, the learning gap, and just, making sure that we can assess students appropriately and get them the needs that they need.
Right. And so it sounds like to me that may then translate into maybe some salaries for additional people to help your students and things like that, or counselors or things along that line,
right.
Possibly?
We have brought on staff to support, like with the COVID response. We also have had staff like we have the family liaison who works with families and networks them out throughout the local community. We also have hired a behavioral specialist to address social emotional learning needs. So bringing on staff that we didn't have before to, again, support students as they transition back into the physical world.
Nice. And this money then, I guess, could pay for that additional staff then a few years into the future, hopefully,
yes,
if you still need them, right?
Yeah, and that's why we're trying to be strategic, where we can use this money within the next several years so that we can have these people or positions in place so that we can not just do a one-stop shop this year and then not do anything ever again. We want to have some kind of longevity with these positions and continue to support students and families.
Right. Or I guess keep those folks on board, but then that might impact other budget issues if you don't have the money to pay for it down the road.
Right. So, yeah, again, it's just, using President Bush's strategery, we're
right.
just trying to get it where we can calculate that correctly so that, again, services are continuous and we don't have that drop-off.
Right. You mentioned, of course, as students return to face-to-face learning, of course, and that puts, I would assume, pressure on like custodial staff and things like that to do maybe more deep cleaning and more regular cleaning than maybe we did prior to COVID. We were talking about that before I came on the air, too, and that's something that you oversee as the custodial staff.
Yeah, exactly. So, the pandemic has taught us a lot. When we were talking earlier, we talked about how we really didn't realize, or we didn't pay attention enough to, how germs are spread, and we didn't really think about how many times does somebody touch a handrail, or how many times does somebody touch a doorknob, but we're thinking about it now.
Yeah, and it freaks me out. Yes.
And then, so we're also, we had to learn on what could we use to kill things off, effectively and safely for everyone. So the pandemic has taught us a lot on how to respond to these kinds of situations, and hopefully we've learned a lot of the right practices so that we can maintain schools safely and keep them where they are environments that students can learn in safely and free from,
right,
the bad germs.
Exactly. But getting it back to your staff, though, they are the ones that are in charge of going out and doing probably more cleaning more frequently, I suppose, than they were before.
Yes, they do when staff is in school or students are in school, they have this routine where they go in and they do all the high touch areas, and if we have any possible person that might have been in contact, we do deeper cleanings for that. It has put a lot more workload on the custodians. We're always looking for custodians. So if you're out there and you have nothing to do and you want a job that's rewarding, knowing that you can provide a space for students and staff to, to learn and teach, come on out to Bloomfield. We always are looking for custodians.
Your help wanted sign is out.
The help
is
wanted
what
sign
you're saying.
is out, yes.
And these are full-time positions that
Full-time
you're hiring
positions,
for,
yes,
right?
sir.
For custodians, and then I know bus drivers too, right? You
Yeah.
could use some more bus drivers for your students.
Yeah, equally, we are having a hard time finding bus drivers, and that's not just a Bloomfield thing. Locally, I've been in discussion with the other districts. They too are having a shortage with bus drivers, and equally, this is a national thing. Where bus drivers are high in demand,
Right,
and
right.
we are doing our best to find bus drivers, but it's not an easy process. It's not like I can just get put myself in a bus, because there's training that's required. I mean,
There's a lot of training. You were telling me how much training, and I was surprised that, more than just learning how to drive the actual bus,
Right.
there's so much more than that.
right. So there's like 30 plus hours that you would have to have. You'd have to have your CDL with an S endorsement, so you'd have to train up on that. You'd have to have CPR, first aid, pass the DOT physical, and then pass your driving test. So,
In a bus.
In a bus.
Right, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Me, I don't know how good of a bus candidate I would be, but I'm used to a small compact car. So
Right,
just
I hear
imagine
you.
A long bus and then having 60 passengers,
Right.
So,
But there's a lot to it, and so, but you have openings for bus drivers as well.
we have openings for bus drivers as well.
Okay. And those are more, I know they're not necessarily full-time, are they? They're contract kind of workers. Is that how it's set
Right.
up at Bloomfield?
Yeah, and it's perfect. If you're sitting at home retired and you want to do something in the morning, it takes a few hours in the morning of your time, and then you have the middle of the day, and then you have the end of the day where you do another 2-3 hours of work, and then we're done. And the most rewarding thing, I think, is bus drivers are always the first person who greets the students when they come to school, and the last person who sends them off on their day. So
Right.
Bus drivers are like real critical to what we do in schools.
And so I guess I'm just curious, when you don't have enough, how do you juggle the schedule, I guess, to still get all your kids into school? Because I know Bloomfield has some pretty long bus routes. We talked in the past about how the district extends south a long way. I think it's at least to Liebrecht. Is that not true?
Yes, sir. It has a big geographic footprint. And so how do we do it? Well,
Yeah.
we do it with some amazing staff who are being very strategic on how they're designing those routes. Time,
Right.
we have to maintain a good time schedule. We have to double up on some routes. My hat's off to our amazing staff in transportation, because as you know, we used our bus drivers even since when the pandemic started on delivering food.
They never stopped. That's true. They
So
were out kind of as like mobile food delivery buses, right?
Yeah, so
That's right.
their role and function has changed throughout this whole entire pandemic. They've been nonstop. I'm just ecstatic that I have an amazing staff that is just doing an amazing job, and supporting families and students, and doing their main job of to and from transportation for students.
Right. That's amazing. And I can only imagine the juggling that you and your staff have had to do with the limited number of drivers that you have, to still serve the numbers of students that you do, while maybe some more in-town kids have to maybe find other ways to get to school, or just wait a little longer for the bus to come.
Right, and we've had that. Where kids are waiting a little bit longer and whatnot. We have had parents who have decided to just take their kids into school, which helps. But the safest way to school is in a bus.
Right.
And so, as much as we would want all the kids to be in the bus, we are still looking for bus drivers so we can have those additional buses. At one point, we had 13 routes and only 9 drivers. So it's all hands on deck. And
Right.
So I would love to say that I'm tackling that all by myself, but like I said, I have an amazing staff who is going through and looking at those routes and doubling up on those routes. I have my mechanic who's driving. I have the transportation manager who's driving. So it is just a nonstop effort by them.
Very good. And I know this problem is not unique to Bloomfield schools. This is an issue that districts across the state, probably across the country, are facing for the shortage of drivers. So it's not unique to Bloomfield at all.
Not at all. Even in the news, like I had mentioned earlier, I had seen even down in Florida, they're having this issue where the bus drivers are just in high demand everywhere. And so it sounds bad, but it's comforting to know that it's not just Bloomfield.
No. That's true.
Because if it was just Bloomfield, then I'd worry, because what are we doing? And so knowing that it's locally, knowing that it's statewide, the struggle is real, and so I'm hoping that we can rebound from it and find individuals who are, like I said, if you need something to do in the morning and the afternoon, and you have that time, and you ever wanted to be a bus driver, come out.
There you go. That's true. And so I know all these positions that we're talking about, probably folks can find more details on the Bloomfield Schools website.
Yes, sir.
Is that how to apply and find out more?
Yep. If you want to apply, just go to the BSIN website and go to the HR department, look up current listings, and then you can see what we have available in Bloomfield Schools.
Very, very good. My guest this morning, James Olivas, is here. He is a Director of Operations at the Bloomfield School District. We're talking a little bit about some of the projects that he is involved with, talking a little bit about some of the COVID relief money that's come to the district, about $6 million worth. And so plans are to maybe have some planning, I guess, in place then in the next few months. Is that the hope?
Yes, sir. So, like I said, we had been working for the past several months on this plan and how we were going to use grant funds in the district. We've had stakeholder meetings. We've presented to the board. We've shared out with principals. And pretty much what we're trying to do is just cover a lot of the issues that we have based on a lot of the side effects from the pandemic. How has the pandemic uprooted what we normally did traditionally? And how do we apply these funds so that, again, they're not just, a one and done. So we're looking at improving instruction. We're looking at to minimize the learning gap. We're looking at after-school tutoring. We're looking at summer academies, just ways that we can actually support students and decrease that learning gap that they might have experienced due to the virtual learning. Got you.
A lot more impactful spending than just buying $6 million of hand sanitizer.
Exactly.
Although that's important too, but not maybe that much worth.
Right. It is important to keep everything safe in that aspect, but we're looking at that holistic view of the child, and how can we best support that child through all these additional services or staff that we're bringing online.
Right, and you mentioned this is it's a long-term goal as well, so it's not just maybe funding these jobs for the next school year, but maybe the next 2 or 3 school years, right? Maybe
exactly.
A more long-term investment as well in your students.
Exactly. We have, I think it's about 3 years to spend this money. So we're looking at a 3-year long-term plan, phasing in things and then moving forward. And again, trying to just do the best job that we can to strategically spend this money in a way that makes sense, in the way that best supports family and students.
Right. Another project I wanted to ask you about this morning is the multi-purpose field in Bloomfield, yes. And that's a project that's been going on for a while. What's the update on that?
So 2 years and plus, this multi-purpose field has been a figment of an imagination that's coming to fruition. We broke ground about 2-3 weeks ago. And it's amazing. I had people come up and hug me because they're like, "Man, we really wanted this field."
Right.
And it's nice. That's the rewarding part when there's a need and people are very supportive in what you're doing to make that happen. It's amazing because you're doing the right things for the right reasons. And so the multi-purpose field, we'll use it for like its name is for multiple uses. One, we can use it for outdoor learning space. We can use it for add space for students to eat lunch in a non-traditional inside. The New Mexico Pet has asked us to think outside the box, and especially during pandemic, the way they sit in the cafeteria, we don't sit the same way anymore. So
right, you can't. Right, that's true. So outdoor space may be useful for that when the weather cooperates. Sure. Yeah.
And then also it supports the social emotional learning. Being really working on the fitness and the wellness of a student, getting out and exercising because they've been trapped inside their houses behind a computer screen. The sun does good things for you naturally. Just being able to stretch and walk and breathe in fresh air, all that supports a good health and wellness type state of being for people. So we can use that multi-purpose in that sense. Right.
Very good. And so tell us where that's located for folks who maybe aren't familiar with where this project is going.
So if you're familiar with Bloomfield Schools and you know where the Bobcat Gym is, it's directly behind the Bobcat Gym. It used to be the old softball field that we tore down a few years ago. We actually had local business who actually supported us in demoing it, and then it sat vacant for several years. And then we ended up being able to budget that in within the last couple years, and now we're almost...
Nice. Very good. Congratulations. And
Thanks.
you said you had groundbreaking a couple weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
For some of this. And so I guess then some of the costs that go with this type of a project would be maybe irrigation and sod and some of that other stuff. Is that what you're planning, and maybe other landscaping?
Yes, sir. So, a lot of people had the idea where we just put grass on it, but it wasn't that simple, because we had to go in and think about irrigation. We had to go in and think about drainage on the fields. We had to make sure that everything was safe. And since we're building it adjacent to the new baseball field, we didn't want any new construction to mess up what we currently had. So we had implement retention walls,
Right,
sidewalks, and that kind of sense. So yeah, there's a lot just in the field that happens.
Got you. And of course, it's being designed for multi-purpose, as you said, and so it can have a lot of different uses once it's complete. What's the timeline on construction, I guess?
So it's a two-phase project. We're going to finish phase 1 here in October, and because of the irrigation, we're going to hold off on putting sod down until April when the water comes back.
Sure.
So by April, we'll have hopefully a more complete field with sod, and we get to use it a little bit faster than if we were growing grass by seed. So hopefully April, May, we'll have a nice, flush, beautiful multi-purpose field.
Very good. Well, again, congratulations. And another, I think, great example, too, how sometimes schools can help communities by these amenities and things like that, because obviously the field will be used by the school district, but I imagine when the school district's not using it, maybe other folks could use it too.
Yeah,
like other fields and things at the Bloomfield schools.
One thing that always goes unnoticed, I think, is just how busy schools are after school's out. If you go to the high school, you always see action and activity in the high schools. You see
Well, now we do, which we're grateful for, but
yes,
yeah, you're right.
Yes. And it's good to see. I mean, kids coming back to school is amazing. And like I said, we forgot how busy schools are. And you go at the high school and you have YAFL going on, or you have community events, or you have just an array of things going on in a given day. And then kind of like, on TV where you see like a movie studio and you see all those different characters and people just walking around everywhere. I mean, it's similar to that, and it's good to see that we're almost back to normal.
Right. I agree with you. And even here in our studio, we have a nice window out to the hallway, and it's nice to see students wandering around. Sometimes they're looking for their classrooms. I think they all know where they're going today, but at the beginning of the semester, I always know that look when they're just kind of out there looking for where they're going. But it's been great to see, because there were months at a time here when the lights were off in that hallway, and I think I was the only one in the building for a few weeks on end. So it's nice to see that changing, and I can hear what you're saying about even things at the schools, inside and out.
Yeah,
on the property, so that's great to know. I want to talk a little bit about assessments. That is something that I know, schools are concerned about, and they get criticized for, and things along that line. Is how do we know a kid is learning unless we test the kid on what and he or she is learning, and that's an assessment. Until we come up with a better way to do it, that's what we have as a tool. And it sounds like the state is just wanting to make sure you do that more this year, because of last year was just so. In and out, we're learning, we're virtual learning, we're back in school, we're virtual learning, and it's just last year was kind of a mixed year, I guess is what I would say.
Right, and the thing with assessment, like we were talking earlier, assessment is the partner to instruction. So as we teach kids, we have to be able to measure: did they learn, did they progress? And the state, it knows that it is important, but primarily is because we've had students who haven't been formally assessed in over a year and a half. And so how do we know where's the benchmark on where they are now? And so that is kind of like the importance on why they're offering testing opportunities here in the fall, which weren't normally offered before. We would normally test in the spring. But with a year and a half of no assessments, then there's this need to find out where are students, and assessment allows us to better understand what does the student know and not know. Assessments allow us to apply interventions or instructional strategies for students. So assessment always gets a bad rap because it is that flag in the sand that says, hey, this is where we're at. Sometimes it's good news and sometimes it's not so good news. But and I say not so good news because when you take a test, you don't want to be the one that's failing the test. You want to say, hey, at least I've grown some. And so because tests are personal, the results are personal. That's why I kind of think they get a bad rap. But if we think of assessment in the framework that it is what unrolls the plan in front of you and puts those benchmarks so that you can have something to strive for, or where you need to actually work on to improve, then assessments are a good thing. It's just we have to do those in a smart way.
Right, and I guess it's a way to find that student who's maybe not catching up or may fall through the cracks, and we don't want that to happen. And so an assessment would be a way to maybe identify that early on. It's not 2 weeks before the end of the school year to say, well, let's work on this with this student between now and the end of the school year to get him back up to, or her, back up to where they need to be to progress on to the next level in the next fall.
Exactly. It's kind of like after you've played the game and you go back and you look at the sports footage or whatever plays you did or ran or all the mistakes that you made, it's almost identical. It would be nice if it was as fluid as something like a sports reel. However, it can be used in the same sense. Did I add when I should have multiplied? Did I use a verb when I should have used a noun? Did I, a lot of that playback in the assessments, like you said, helps us really cater what instruction students need and better support them.
Right, and it sounds like you have some of the staff in place to add additional help for those students if and when they do need it to help get them maybe up if there was some of that lost learning over the last year and a half.
Exactly. So earlier we had talked about with the ARP funding how we were doing the tutoring and after school work with students, and then how we're going to do summer academies. So this is one way where we can use grant funds and use the assessment data that we've compiled and then build supports around students so that we can, again, fill in those gaps and then get them to a better place.
Right, and I'm afraid that after the year that we've had, it's not a small number of students. They may be in good company because I think there's a lot of students that may be struggling because of last year and just trying to be at the grade level where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, and that's the importance with the assessment. Find out how many do we have and find out exactly where they are. And yeah, I would say there's no better thing than in-person instruction. Mainly because when you're doing it virtually, it's not as easy to do because when you're walking through the classroom, when I was in the classroom, I could spot check kids in an instant, and then I could provide immediate feedback as I'm walking through and having those micro conversations with them to just check their understanding or just to dissolve any misconceptions they might have. And so when you're in the classroom and doing that with students in real time, it's much easier and better for the student, whereas virtually it's a little bit harder to do. And then so I think in the past year and a half, students haven't had those micro conversations with teachers to make those micro adjustments, which carry students far.
Right.
So yeah,
that instant feedback, because if you're on the wrong track after a year and a half, you're way off track.
Exactly. I kind of like my mindset is when I was in the military, I worked on radar systems, and then when we would fine tune a radar system, if you were off, I think it was by a half an inch, you were off by like at least 15 miles, and so when you're flying at 250 miles per hour, that matters. Yeah. And then so in the same token, when you're in the classroom, if you're off a little bit, how far is that going to take you? That could open up a huge window of error for that student.
Very true. Very true. Well, Mr. Olivas, we are out of time, but I have a whole other show in my mind now about your military career, so we'll have you back for that maybe in a future date. But thank you for coming in to give us an update on Bloomfield Schools. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. That is James Olivas. He is the Director of Operations for the Bloomfield School District, my guest this morning here on KSJE. KSJE is supported by the Farmington Civic Center, bringing a full slate of entertainment to Farmington and San Juan County. The Hitmen, the classic rock supergroup, Thursday, October 7th at 7:30 p.m. The Farmington Civic Center, 200 West Arrington in downtown Farmington. Find out more online at fmtn.org/shows or at 505-599-1148. KSJE is proud to support the Outdoor Expo, a free event happening September 29th through October 1st at the Farmington Civic Center. See some outdoor gear and businesses and have a chance to win a free cataract boat or mountain bike. The Outdoor Expo is part of the New Mexico Outdoor Economics Conference in Farmington. Find out more about the Outdoor Expo at outdooreconomics.com.